I'm Carole Owens, and this is Stockbridge Updates. You know, Stockbridge is a little old village in the corner of Massachusetts, but sometimes it's a microcosm for the whole nation. What we're going to discuss today is not a Stockbridge issue, it's an America issue. And my guest is Bob Jones, selectman from Lee, Massachusetts. Bob, I'm delighted to see you.
Carole, thank you so much for having me again.
The issue is, I know, one that you think and talk a lot about, and that is the necessity of people getting involved and the difficulty of getting them involved.
It is difficult, and it's funny that it's coming from you, because I can remember you and I attending a Stockbridge town meeting several years ago when I was a resident in Stockbridge, and walking in, and we had two people in front of us, and one picked up the warrant and looked at the other and said, "What are we voting on tonight?" And I was absolutely horrified, and you were horrified, and I was like, how can this be? How can you walk into a town meeting and not know the issues before you walk in? And I think that's the case for a lot of people. Not all people, but for a lot of people that is the case. And while they were there to do their civic duties, I think that they somewhat failed themselves by not informing themselves beforehand.
And that was the birth of Stockbridge Updates.
That was the birth of Stockbridge Updates, exactly right.
From that day to this day.
Yes.
Yeah, so we're still trying. I remember saying to you at one point when we were discussing the PCB problem and the whole contract with GE and the EPA involvement, and saying, gosh, what will get people involved? How will we let them know what the issues are and what's coming? And we were talking about it because you're on my my editorial board at Stockbridge Updates, and it was an issue for Stockbridge Updates how we could cover this in an effective way. And I remember saying to you, when the trucks roll, and then, of course, then they'll see. But then you had the brilliant idea to say, well, let's report that they're going to roll. Yes. And I think that was the beginning of people getting involved.
Well, quite often issues like rest of the river, I think they show up as sort of an abstract for people. You know, if you're in Great Barrington, that's happening over in Lee, you know, or if you're in Lee, that's happening over in Lenox. But the truth of the matter is that those town lines don't mean a thing when it comes to, there's a certain commonality, such as the river corridor, or the railroad, or tourism, or, you know, open space. Those are things that impact us all. And I just don't think that there are a lot of, I think that a lot of people that doesn't occur to them.
I think the magic word is impact.
Impact, yeah.
I remember a girlfriend of mine when I was in college had utterly no interest in politics, none at all. I don't think she could have told you who was president. And if she could tell you who was the United States president, she certainly couldn't have told you who her senator was. And there are a lot of people like that. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't catch their interest because they don't know it affects them. It was during the Vietnam War. Mm-hmm. They had a draft by lottery.
Yes.
And her boyfriend picked number 3. And all of a sudden, governmental decisions, by gum, federal governmental decisions,
yes,
reached down and touched her heart. And she became very involved in politics. So and it's the same thing with the trucks. The 13 trucks or however many a day rolling in front of your house with poisonous material underneath a tarp in the back will catch your attention. And I'm just wondering, with the issues we have right now in our towns, in our Commonwealth, in our country, what are the things that would grab people?
Well, I'm hoping, in fact, I just had this discussion with a group of friends this morning, that given the administration in Washington, given the propensity of government to not listen to people these days, and to we've talked about this before, to rule from above rather than to actually represent. I'm hoping that will bring out the voters in 2026, given that they now are realizing how impacted we are by the choice of half the country for the current administration.
You know, I did an editorial. I'm going to bring this down to the local level, from the national level. I did an editorial for Stockbridge Updates, which actually will be out later today. And I said that I walked around Elm Street and Main Streets just talking to folks on one of our beautiful evenings that we've had this summer. And people were kind of dissatisfied. They were complaining a little bit. And I wondered if it's because our national context is disturbing and it's filtering down, or if there were local things that bothered them. And I wondered, how could I listen to them and then fashion a sentence or a topic that would grab them, that would make them say, wow, I want to do something about this. It's a really key question.
Yeah, I think that you're right. Impact is personal impact is the main driver for people getting involved. The other problem we have these days is accuracy in the news, accuracy in journalism, and quite frankly, the complete distortion of the truth, which has come with largely with the internet, where people where their news sources are, how credible they are. I mean, I subscribe to 3 different newspapers, and I watch network news. I also watch Fox News on occasion just to know what those folks are doing. And you try to distill it all down. But if you're on the internet and you're getting your news from some guy sitting in his boxers in his mom's basement, you're probably not going to have the same perspective that I do or that you do. But there's a lot of that going around. Or some people get their news off of Facebook or TikTok or whatever it is. And I don't want to criticize those platforms, but it's not the same.
Yeah, but you know what? I believe it's designed to motivate people, if nothing more, to motivate them to click to the next page. And I think it's designed to, I think some of the misinformation that you're complaining about has to do with the fact that it's designed to hit them emotionally, not intellectually.
Yeah.
And yet, we have the same problem. Professor Timothy Snyder from Yale University wrote a book called On Tyranny, but he followed that now with a book, the title of which I cannot remember, on how to fight tyranny. And one of the first things that he says is the larger the group of people, the more people you can attract to a cause or to interact with government or whatever in order to effect a change. The number is effectiveness. And actually, if you think about it, our whole government's based on that. Majority rules.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so they're better at it than we are. The internet, the Facebook, the rest.
Well, that's true.
They're very, very good at it. Now, either can we harness them? Could we say, please, could you be on our side and do this? Or what do we do?
I think the other side of that is, or certainly another aspect of it is, that there used to be we didn't have this information instantaneously accurate or otherwise. And now we few keystrokes and we get it. But because we didn't have that, the process was slower. There was a way to exchange ideas over a period of time rather than in a few seconds. And there was time to consider it, to ponder an issue, and that left room for building consensus and agreement. And there might be different sides of an issue, but we weren't as fractured as we are now. And I think that the internet has really contributed to that. And you're right. I think that there's much to be gained by keeping people off balance, keeping people making adversaries out of people, and people get attached to certain ideologies now because if they have a propensity toward a certain ideology, that's where they go, and the internet will take them there without them even knowing that they're being taken. And so it's far more complicated than I can explain, but I can see it happening with family and friends and neighbors.
You know, it brings up two important points in my mind. One is, we haven't changed. We've still got two eyes, one nose, a mouth, a couple of ears. Yeah. We have an IQ, which is the ability, the capacity for learning of this number or that number, but it's within a range. But everything around us has changed so much. And do you know what? I just want to underscore something a point I think you were making, and that is, they may be able to shoot information at us faster. We can't process it any faster. There are things human beings still need in order to take the time to think it through, to form an opinion. And there's a difference between the knee-jerk reaction.
Yes.
And we've all had this experience. And we have this knee-jerk reaction, oh my gosh, that's the greatest, that's the worst, that's something in between. And then we wake up the next morning and we think, why do we think that was so important? Wait a minute, I thought it through a second.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I was thinking is, clearly a segment of our population has become very adept, skilled, educated in how to motivate people. We ought to get the book. we ought to read up.
It's all about making the sale, you know?
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. Okay, I thank you so much, and we're gonna go beyond this and talk about more things as this segment continues. But let's not forget that you're always, because of the kind of representative you are, and that you want to represent the people, you want to do your job as described. You're not interested in ruling from on high. You always want people to get involved.
Absolutely, and I mean, in fact, I am disappointed when I see if we have a select board meeting and there are only 2 or 3 or 4 people in the room. That can be taken in a couple of different ways. It's like, oh my goodness, people aren't interested. You know, where are the people? And the other side of it is, I try to tell them, well, maybe they're satisfied with the job that we're doing.
Well, good.
but I just encourage people just to show up. You can do it on Zoom now. You can sit in your bathrobe at home and go to a select board meeting just to check in, to see what's going on. You can look at the agenda beforehand. It's posted days in advance. And if there's anything in there that you want to weigh in on, or you just want to see how it's handled, please do it. I mean,
now I know why you're on my editorial board. You've just given me a great idea. Do you know, for all these years, Stockbridge Updates has reported what happened at the meeting after it happened. After this conversation with you, I'm going to put a new section in Stockbridge Updates before the meeting saying, here's the agenda, here is how that agenda item affects you. The amount of your taxes, the amount of traffic on your street, the, I don't know, the number of potholes. I'll search it down, and from now on, Stockbridge Updates is going to take at least one section to say, this is how it affects you. Because that's not selfishness or uncaring about the general thing. That's following through on what you understand.
Absolutely.
And we have to help them.
You have to help, and remember, the cost of freedom is constant vigilance. And checking out a select board meeting agenda is about vigilance, really. It's about you controlling, you as an individual, you as a voter, controlling how things move forward, or at least having a say in pushing it one way or the other. And to lose that opportunity is doing a great disservice to oneself.
Bless your heart, so well spoken. And you keep writing those agendas, and I'll keep telling people how it's going to affect them personally. Bob Jones, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You know, I just realized something. Doing this job of telling people how it is going to affect you if you vote yes or if you vote no is not just the job of Stockbridge Updates. Holy cow! It's the job of everybody in our government. In a democracy, that's the job. In Stockbridge, that is the job of the Finance Committee at town meeting. To tell you, do you have any questions about this money bill, this money agenda item, and we'll tell you what the effect would be. That's the job of town administrator and job of the select board. Bob, you're on the select board. Do you consider this part of your job?
Well, absolutely. And with any article on an agenda, say at a town meeting, obviously, we should all educate ourselves beforehand. But then when we go to town meeting, we should feel free and compelled to ask questions about the long-term effects. Whether you vote yes on this, you vote no on this, what are the long-term effects? What are the variables? What are the possible, extreme as they might be, what are the possible outcomes if we vote this into office? And you have to bear in mind, and this doesn't have to do just with the town of Lee or Stockbridge or any small town. Listen, there are good select board members and there are not so good select board members wherever you go, and nobody's exempt from that. So you have to bear in mind that elected officials or even appointed officials might have their own personal agenda in getting something passed or not passed. So it's our job as residents, as voters, as citizens, to sort of sniff out what's actually happening, sniff out all the conceivable variables that might come out of this thing passing or not passing, and be aware of that, and make our neighbors and family and friends aware of it also, because there's what's being said. But what may be more important is what's not being said. And so that's why it's important to open up a dialogue to actually get to what's actually happening.
This is what you call the vigilance in order to have a democracy. And it just occurs to me that we don't have to know these things. We just have to know who to ask.
We have to know how to ask.
And everyone in government, our administrator, our select board members, our finance committee, planning board, CONCOM, should be more than willing, should consider it part of their job to answer your questions.
Well, they have a responsibility to answer your question. It is an inherent responsibility. As soon as, we live in a democratic republic. As soon as you raise your hand and take that oath of office, you have a responsibility to submit, if you will, to the will of the voters in general. It's your job to represent. Now, you can't represent every single individual in all cases, but you can find out what the general consensus is, and then even that consensus might be off. Then it's your job to go and find out, that doesn't sound right. Why is it off? And bring it back to the people you represent to continue that discussion. It's about facts, and it's about the truth.
And it seems to me that the words, a government of, by, and for the people, actually mean that we are all participants. So, as Stockbridge updates, I will take the obligation going forward of looking at least one agenda of one board or commission committee in advance and saying, they are voting on this. This is how it will personally affect the citizenry. This is the impact on taxes, on livability, on the beauty of our town. These are the impacts, so that you are educated voters. But as Stockbridge Updates commits to doing that, please know this. Every elected official, volunteer board member, employed administrative person owes you an answer. Reach out and get those answers. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carole.
We have been talking with Bob Jones, selectman from Lee, about how to get folks involved. And we also have a wonderful surprise, and that is that Chris Brittain, town administrator in Lee, has been able to join us. So we're all going to tackle this situation. Bob, remind us of why this is so key to having a democracy.
Well, first of all, I wouldn't know what to do unless my constituents, residents, friends, family, neighbors in Lee sort of gave me an idea of what direction I should be going in. That's pretty essential in a democracy. And when we're talking about local government, that's sort of the lowest level of government. I don't mean in terms of importance, but local is local, and it goes all the way up to federal. But we're the start for everything.
Mm-hmm. And it's the model. And that's why it's so important, Chris, Bob, why it's so important that we talk about how to motivate people, how to get them involved, because that mirrors all the way up to our United States Senate and United States House of Representatives, and by gosh, the White House. We were really talking, Bob, you and I, more about what motivates people. If it hits home, if it's happening on their block, if the PCBs are being put on a truck and they're going down Main Street, it captures attention, it captures the imagination. But I think there's a way to let people know, and you were saying that you would want to let people know the impact of a piece of legislation, not just short term, but into the future. I thought it was so interesting when you said that. And I wonder if you have any example in your mind that you could show people how it sounds like it's way out there, but it really affects their lives.
Well, the most immediate and one of the most pressing concerns for Lee right now, and has been for the last 5 years, actually maybe closer to 15 years, is, of course, the rest of the river agreement. Mm-hmm. Well, that river is a thread that runs from north of Pittsfield all the way to Long Island Sound. Mm. And so any decisions in terms of a cleanup or remediation, bioremediation, or even the building of a dump in the Berkshires, which there's one that right now is planned for Lee, is not confined simply to Lee. And so there may be somebody in Sheffield or Great Barrington who's thinking, well, that's happening in Lee. Well, not so, because that river runs through all of those towns. And even with a dump, when you're talking about a dump that's 11 stories high and 20 some odd acres in area above an aquifer, if something occurred, if there was a problem, a seismic event or even a leak in the line or something like that, we don't know, I don't know, but the experts don't even know how all of those glacial caverns underground, limestone caverns, how they all interconnect. So if you got PCBs into a water, it ended up in a water source, doesn't mean it's going to be confined to Lee. It could be Lennox, Stockbridge, Great Barrington, and Sheffield. I think if people had a clearer understanding of that, or at least of the possibility of that happening, there might be a greater level of concern.
Mm-hmm. And then looking at it, it's like macro and micro. So that's the macro way of looking at it. My goodness, this could spread out. We could have PCBs in Long Island Sound, and we certainly didn't want that. But there's also the micro impact. I told the story about my girlfriend in college who cared nothing about politics until her boyfriend got drafted. And then all of a sudden, oh my, this is my life. And one of the ways I look at this, and maybe you could correct me though, is taxes matter to everybody. And so many of the decisions that are made by select board and a town meeting will then impact the taxes. Well,
absolutely. And we recently had the town meeting approved a major building project. We approved a building project for a fire EMS police facility, and then at the same time, in order to build that facility, we had to purchase a place for the DPW, and I think that ran over $30 million, right? About 36.
Yeah, it's about 36.7.
36.7. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And it leaves a small town, and of course, everybody thankfully understood the need for this. But the first question was, how is it going to impact me personally? Well, the average tax increase because of these projects for the average home in Lee, the median home in Lee, was about $350 a year.
Wow.
And so the way some of us translated that was, if you could get one person in your household to not buy a beer or not buy an expensive latte, you can make up for that tax increase. Not everybody in the household has to get up, just one, and only one time per week for a year. And that sounds a little more palatable, or at least you can figure out, that's how it's going to impact me. And it's important that people, put it have that perspective in order to really understand what's going on.
I love that, because that shows people that these big amorphous projects actually come down to whether or not you get a latte.
Exactly.
Just one day a week.
Only once a week. Only once a week.
That's wonderful. All right, so let's pretend, Bob, first, I want to thank you so much, and you've spent so much time with us, and I know you have to go because you're a very important, busy man. But thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Carole.
Okay, good. And Chris, I'm going to put you on the hot seat here. Let's say that we figure out the perfect way to involve people, and they all want to get involved. So, what are some ways that they can be heard by their elected officials or their town administrator? What can they do to get heard and to get their point across?
So there's a lot of different ways, and you mentioned town meeting. That's one way people can get involved. And I think we take for granted a little bit how lucky we are in Massachusetts and in New England that towns that have an open town meeting, you're basically making up your own legislature for the town. And you don't see that everywhere in the country. There's a lot of areas that just have a city council or a town council with a smaller group of people, but we're, everything from the project that Bob talked about that was almost $37 million started at town meeting. Our zoning bylaws, we recently had a change for our short-term rentals, and we've had a few people come to town hall and ask, why did this happen? When did we do this? Like, it was passed unanimously at a town meeting, and you know, and you say, well, why didn't you, if you didn't want it, why didn't you come to the town meeting and vote against it? You know,
or stand up and speak.
And stand up and speak, right? And we have it at the annual town meeting is the same day every year, second Thursday of May, 7 o'clock at the high school. So it's a regular thing, and so that's one way you can get involved. It's just 1 or 2 nights a year. But it's huge. We're voting on the operating budget, all of our capital items, all of our CPA items, any zoning or general bylaw changes, all happen at that town meeting. Kind of from there, the next thing is we have appointed positions, and we always have positions available on appointed committees. Not every committee has openings, but at any given time, there's going to be multiple committees and boards that have openings on them. And that just takes a simple letter of interest that you can send to me or to the board, and the select board makes appointments twice. They can do it as often as twice a month. So
if I had a particular interest in what was happening on the Conservation Commission or the Planning Board, by gosh, sign up.
Right. And some of them really don't have limits to the number of members, or they have really high limits that never get filled. Others, like Conservation Commission, it's 7 members. If that's filled, you have to wait until there's an opening. But others, like Greener Gateway Committee, that does a lot of environmental projects, recycling projects, town cleanups, they don't really have a set limit on how many people can join that. You know.
But all right, let's say I have a Conservation Commission issue. I'm thinking about something that falls in that realm. And they have all their 7 members. I don't have an opportunity right now. But I can attend a meeting, right?
Yep, absolutely. Every meeting that we have is, with very few exceptions. There's some exemptions for certain things for executive sessions, but most of the meetings are all open session. Anybody can attend. Most of them, if not all of them, have an area for public comment. And then some of them have public hearings, depending on if there's a special permit before the planning board. Then there is a public hearing, and anyone can get up and speak. On a regular meeting without the hearing, they still often have time for public comment, where people can comment on any topic before the board. So
now, let's say you feel like nobody's listening to you. By gosh, I have this issue, and nobody seems to be taking me seriously. What can I do? Can I get a petition?
Yeah, so there's, I guess, when you look at petitions, you could do just a generic petition and bring it to to the select board or to a board or commission. It doesn't necessarily mean something will happen. It depends on what you're asking for and what the board members decide. But there also is a petition process for town meeting, and that does carry more weight. So that requires a certain number of signatures. It depends on whether it's a special town meeting. I think this is off the top of my head, but I think that takes 100 signatures.
In order to call a special town meeting, takes multiples of 100. But for an issue on a town meeting,
just 10 for
that's the power of 10.
10, yep. So a regular town meeting is going to be just 10 signatures.
And I noticed, for example, in Great Barrington, they were very concerned. Some people in Great Barrington have a water source for drinking water and bathing and so forth that seems to work quite well. But 180, I believe, of the residents of Great Barrington have a water source that's not working so well. It's a little brown. I don't know if it smells, but it's not, folks are concerned. So they worked very hard, and they got their 100 or 150, whatever it is, signatures to call a special town meeting. But this was interesting to me. There then was a lot of negative feedback for the people who did this, saying, this is going to cost the town money, this is what, as a town administrator, what's your view? plus minus on citizens asking for a special town meeting?
Yeah, so the special town meeting, and particularly the petitions, there's a lot of things that people don't always realize, I guess, about those. Just because you do the petition and just because it passes doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. As you just mentioned, you might get to a town meeting and people speak against your petition and it gets voted down. But even if the petition passes, sometimes, you're only necessarily authorizing the select board to purchase something. The board could take that authorization but never use it and never actually make the purchase.
Right. You don't become the executive branch.
Correct. You're just letting them, yeah.
Yeah, you're still legislative branch, and you watch this play out on the federal level, and the legislative branch does not always listen to the executive.
Right. And vice versa.
The executive does not always listen to the executive, to the legislative branch. But I was thinking about another thing. What's your kind of plus minus evaluation of citizens calling a special town meeting? What's good? What may not be so good?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's good when there's a particular urgency, because we're going to have an annual town meeting every year. And it does take a lot of planning. It does take a lot of staffing, a lot of work to put a town meeting together. So calling one, if it's something that's very urgent and needs to be done, it can't wait till, maybe we just finished annual town meeting in May and now it's July and we don't want to wait. Sometimes that could be some sort of more emergency sort of thing, like a water supply. It could be even for a piece of property that's for sale that maybe if we wait, the town will be able to buy it later.
Right, yeah.
So I guess it depends. If it's something that can wait till annual town meeting, I think people appreciate to wait and get onto the annual town meeting warrant. And for a number of reasons. One of the resources it takes to put the meeting on, and two, because everybody, or not everybody, but most people know there's going to be a meeting the second Thursday of May. And if there's a special meeting, sometimes you get people that, I didn't realize we were having that, or I didn't know this was coming up. And again, so it sort of depends. If it can wait, I think it's better to wait. It usually is more favorable. But we've had other times when the select board has called special town meetings, not only for urgency, but also because there's so many things to do, it would be a lot to tack all of that onto an annual as well when we're trying to do, fiscal year budgets and things.
Let me go back to meetings, whether it's town meeting or whether it's a committee, a commission, or a board. When Bob and I were talking just before you arrived, and Bob was saying, if you stop and think about it, it's everyone's job, elected officials, appointed officials, me, the press, I'm press, or our other newspapers, to let people know the impact of a plan. If you support this, if you vote for this, this is what would likely happen. If you vote against it, this is what would likely happen. Now, in Lee, whose job is that? Everyone's or someone specific? Because it's lovely to have a republic and have the voters have a lot of power, but not if they don't know what's going on.
Yeah, so I mean, the town makes a number of efforts to try to get the word out about things. I put together personally a summary that kind of explains the background of every motion that we're doing.
This is town meeting.
Town meeting,
right.
And we have sign-ups for people to get e-blasts, to get text messages about things like this. But we can't make people sign up for it. They have to take the initiative to do it. We put out letters in every tax bill saying, sign up for text messages here, sign up for e-blasts here, check the web. There's a calendar online that shows every meeting that we're doing, has links to attend. Some of them, not all of them, hybrid. It is we do leave that up to the committee, but planning board does hybrid meetings, select board does hybrid meetings. So people do have that opportunity, but there has to be some initiative to find that information. We don't have a huge advertising budget to tell people that.
There are 18 towns in South County, District 3. Do you know how many of those have that email blast? Because I just think that's brilliant.
Yeah, a lot of ours is done through our website, and which is a municipal. The website company we use does municipalities, and it's a feature that we subscribe to on that. So I know other towns have the same company, so they should have that option. But, yeah. And you can subscribe right on the website. Yeah. There's a little button you press, and you put your email in, and you can even select what kind of alerts you want to get and that sort of thing. And the text message is you just text. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but you send a text Lee to a certain number, and it subscribes you. And we use that a little more sparingly. But annual town meeting, we always send a message out saying we've posted it, and water breaks, or road closures, or snow emergencies, things like that. We can text blast everyone.
See, I don't know about whether Stockbridge text blasts, because I am not the world's most proficient texter, but I know you get a telephone call.
Yeah, and you can do the robocalls too. Those are done through the sheriff's department, so we're a little more limited on how we can do those. I don't just hit a button and send it like I do for the text or the emails. We have to actually usually go through the police department, and they contact the sheriffs, and they have certain things that they will do those calls for. So, in certain things they won't. I mean, we don't normally do them for town meeting. I don't know if Stockbridge does, but I've never known them to really be too keen on meeting announcements, more of public safety things.
Right, it's a public safety. It's definitely a public safety thing. So, there are myriad options for people to get involved.
Yep, absolutely.
And we want them to do that. And I, for one, am committed to Stockbridge Updates, as I said earlier in the show, to having a section, maybe just one issue at a time, how that may impact you individually. A sort of, who cares? Why should I care about this issue? And I think that all of us, Chris and Bob and I, would love, from each of our perspectives, town administrator, select board member, and local press, we would love for you to be involved. So y'all come, the water is fine, and Chris, thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Okay, and in closing, can you think of any reason not to get involved?
No, I mean, what's really interesting when we look at, we look at the last couple presidential elections, there was, 75, 80% voter turnout. And then you have a town election and you get 20, 25% voter turnout. And, not that the national elections aren't important, they definitely are, but you're going to see a much bigger impact on your locally. When you come to a town election to vote for a new school building or a new fire station, those are things you're going to see. Those are benefits and expenses that you're going to have in your town, and those go to the to an election where, like I say, in a good year, we might get 20, 30% turnout. And then you go to a national election, and I know a lot of that's because of all the media around it, but you'll have 3 times the turnout on that, and not see nearly the amount of local impacts that are going to affect your daily life that you do on a local level. So we definitely would encourage people to try to become more involved locally, or at least just as involved and pay as much attention as people do nationally, because you're going to see those results a lot more. So.
Wise words, and thank you, Chris Brittain, thank you, Bob Jones, And thank you all for joining us.